COVID-19 is an infectious virus that originated in the Wuhan Hubei province of China. Since then, it has traveled throughout the world and it is resisting treatment in individuals. This virus shares 88% of its sequence with a coronavirus found in bats. It also shares 79% of its sequence with the SARS virus and 50% of its sequence with the MERS virus. The symptoms of COVID-19, as I'm sure you've heard, include fever, coughing, and breathlessness. And while you probably have been following the media and keeping track of incidences and the death tolls from COVID-19, what we want to do today is discuss social distancing. And if you have been keeping track of the news, you've heard that the government has recommended that Canadians partake in social distancing to slow the spread of this virus so that we can properly treat it and we don't overwhelm our healthcare system with people who need treatment. Now, if you have been following guidelines, it's probably around your second week of social distancing and you may be starting to feel bits of cabin fever. So in today's episode, we're going to discuss ways to avoid cabin fever and we're going to talk a little bit about why cabin fever happens. So stay tuned. Keep watching. In a typical day, you probably come in contact with so many people, more than you might think. Say, for instance, you go to work. Maybe you work with 5 other people. Well, by coming in contact with them, you're also coming in contact with all the other people that they've been in contact. If perhaps they're like myself, maybe they have 5 immediate family members that they live with. So everywhere I go, I would bring the potential to spread pathogens and diseases from my 5 family members who also bring with them the possibility from all the other people that they've come in contact with. And so with COVID-19, this is where social distancing comes into place. In an attempt to flatten the curve, we are reducing the amount of interactions we have face-to-face with people so that we aren't spreading the virus. However, we've got to make sure that we realize that social distancing doesn't mean social isolation. Social isolation is actually something very detrimental to people and animals. There's been studies that have shown that social isolation can alter serotonin pathways in the brain, and it can lead to depression and anxiety. Social interactions are crucial to our day-to-day living. But what exactly are social interactions? Social interactions are dynamic and spontaneous interplay between 2 or more individuals. Now this can happen when you get to work and you get on the elevator. This can happen if you bump into somebody on the street. All these things are social interactions. And it is said that our brain is actually organized in a way that has evolved around these interactions. Now, with that being said, how can we achieve social distancing and still ensure that we are having social interactions? Well, first of all, with technology nowadays, that is something that we can keep up even though you're not in the same room as another person. Now, social interactions are very important for human beings, and lack of social interactions can lead to this feeling of anxiety, this feeling of claustrophobia that is brought about by cabin fever from social isolation or even social distancing. Our whole brain has evolved in a way where there are overlapping social and emotional networks. In a review paper that looked at MRI studies looking at social networks in the brain and other MRI studies looking at emotional networks in the brain, they saw that there was a high degree of overlap between all these networks, and that can be seen by the yellow in the MRI scan shown there. So regions like the amygdala, the thalamus, the medial prefrontal cortex, the middle temporal lobe, the basal ganglia, and the PCC are regions within the brain that both have emotional connotations and social connotations, which is why when we lose out on one aspect of these networks, so we're no longer activating the networks with social cues or social interactions, that hijacks our emotional networks and can cause things to go awry. And like we talked about in our FOMO video, a study by Eisenberger in 2003 looked at this virtual ball toss game where people were in an fMRI and they could pass a ball to other individuals. And we saw that when they were excluded from the ball toss game, the DACC was activated, which is a region associated with pain. So when we aren't having social interactions or we feel discluded, we feel pain, which is why social distancing can be so hard if we don't do it properly. On top of that, social isolation has been associated with things like depression and increases in cardiac morbidity. A study looking at prairie voles, which were in 4 weeks isolation or either paired with another vole, showed that the animals had a higher heart rate when they were kept in isolation compared to the animals who were kept with a partner. So there are things like anxiety and depression that come about being socially isolated. So how can we make sure that our social distancing doesn't turn into social isolation? Well, the first thing that you can do while you are social distancing is establish a routine. Routines are very important for productivity and for bringing structure to your life. Continue to set your alarm to the same time that you would other days. Continue to get dressed, make sure you shower, and make sure you eat at regular times. Keeping up with a routine will make sure that you get things done. Otherwise, you're going to fall into the routine of sleeping in and just doing nothing all day. While that isn't bad and that's something that you can do every once in a while, you don't want to get too used to it because this can lead to feelings of depression and an anhedonic state. One tip that tends to work for people is when you wake up, make sure you make your bed. This was actually a tip given by a US Navy general who said that if you make your bed every morning, then you've at least achieved something, and when you go back to bed at night, you are reminded of that no matter how poorly your day went or no matter how unproductive you were throughout the day, you're reminded that you at least got something done. This also requires mental discipline, making sure that you complete a task right away when you wake up, and because it's a mundane, repetitive task that doesn't require too much concentration, it is actually good for mindfulness. If you watched our New Year's video or you remember that video, we talked about how you can set goals for the new year and how you can get things done. Another study actually looked at overachieving students, underachieving students, and baseline students in secondary schools. And what they found was that the overachieving students tend to implement more learning strategies and they are better at setting goals. Specifically, they're better at setting learning goals. So one thing you can do while you are in your social distancing is set goals for yourself that you can achieve during the day. One thing that might be helpful is making a checklist, because each time you check something off the list, you feel a sense of reward and that will actually activate your limbic system. Even if you make a checklist and you put a couple things on it that you've already managed to do, checking them off still feels good and it's still rewarding and it can help motivate you to get things done throughout the rest of the day. Also, make sure you're breaking your goals down into chunks. So, rather than saying finish my project or finish this assignment you have, if you have anything to do over this social distancing period of time, don't just write finish assignment, break that down into little steps so that you can reward yourself along the way. This ties into the psychological concept of shaping behaviors, which is often used in training animals, where first an animal would get rewarded for just touching a lever. And then the animal gets rewarded for pressing the lever. And then you can add more complex behaviors to it to shape a certain behavior in the animal. So maybe you want to start working out while you're social distancing, and first thing that you got to do is get yourself to an area in your home where you're going to work out. Perhaps get yourself outside if you want to go for a walk. That's step one. Maybe you don't go for a walk that day, but you got outside. The next day, walk to the end of your driveway. The day after that, walk a little further, and you get rewarded little by little. And James Clear, who is a renowned author on how you can get things done, says that it's apparent that you make your goals specific. If your goal is specific, you are 2 to 3 times more likely to complete it. And a way to tie these goals in is make them part of your everyday routine. If you fit something new into your routine and say, I'm going to go for a walk before I eat breakfast. Well, since you usually eat breakfast and you slipped that in there, you're more likely to get it done because it's now tied to your daily routines. So those are some tips to make sure that we're not lazy during our social distancing. But how can we make sure we don't start feeling anxiety or depression because we're lacking social interactions? Well, we live in a technological era. It's great. It's wonderful. In the palm of your hands, you probably all have a cell phone. And with that, you can FaceTime people, you can call somebody, you can text them, see how they're doing, and you can still have social interactions without leaving your house. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean you shouldn't leave your house. Fresh air is great for you too. Just because we're social distancing doesn't mean we can't go outside. So, the next tip is that you should go outside. Going outside is great because once you're outside, there's actually this thing called sunlight. And sunlight enters through your eyes and activates this area in the brain called the dorsal-raphe nucleus. After that, we release serotonin. And serotonin is kind of the mood booster neurotransmitter in the brain. And so serotonin helps us to feel happier. And you probably notice this on sunny days. You probably are in a better mood than rainy days. And psychological studies have shown that when people answer questionnaires on a sunny day, they are more positive answers, and when they answer questionnaires on rainy days, they tend to be more negatively tinted. Why else should you go outside? Well, to make vitamin D, our skin actually needs sun so that the chemical reaction can happen to make this vitamin. Now, lack of vitamin D is actually one of the things that they think is responsible for SADS, or seasonal affective disorder, which is the decline in mood that some people experience during the winter months. So getting outside can get you sunlight, which can help release serotonin through the dorsal-raphe nucleus pathway, and can help you make vitamin D, which is important to your health. On top of that, there's lots of oxygen outside, and oxygen is important for your whole body. We need oxygen to function. It can help you focus, and you get more oxygen to your brain. That's better for you. Now, what else can you do instead of just going outside? You can also keep active. Keeping active is very important because our brains and our bodies require stimulation. There are actually these pockets that people have done studies in which are sensory deprivation pockets, and if you lie inside these pockets, you will start to lose your mind and people start hallucinating because the brain requires stimulation, your body requires sensation, and so exercising can help you get that. Now, there are lots of ways to keep active at home. I know now lots of gyms have closed down. They should actually all be closed. So how can you get fit at home? How can you stay active at home? Well, you're on YouTube right now. One quick thing to do would just be search up stay-at-home workouts or at-home gym routine, and there are thousands of free videos that can give suggestions. You can also type into Google real quick and a bunch of circuits will pop up that you can do with just body weight exercises or simple things where you use things that you would have at home like a chair. And if you're lucky enough to have little light weights that you can use, you can also work those into your routine. And you don't need a treadmill or a stationary bike because we are still allowed to go outside. So get outside, go for a walk, go for a bike ride, and stay active. And this activity is going to benefit your brain because we're going to increase the oxygen saturation in your brain, and it has also been shown to be associated with an increase in white matter integrity and an increase in gray matter. Also, when we work out, it's been shown that with aerobic exercise, there tends to be an increase in brain-derived neurotrophic factor and immunoglobulin factor 1. Both of these factors are important for neuron growth and the sustenance of synapses. The studies have also showed that while working out can increase these factors, it also tends to increase memory. So get outside, be active, or do a little workout inside your house. Things like jumping jacks, burpees, jump rope, all are stuff you can do at home. Now, you're also going to want to be mentally active, not just physically active. And ways you can do that is perhaps if you've got a lot of time on your hands, maybe try to learn a new language. Or if languages aren't your thing, you can download an app for cognitive training. So there's all sorts of things that you can access with your phones, luckily, or online. Apps like Lumosity, which are for cognitive training, and Duolingo, which helps you learn languages, can help you keep cognitively active during these times of social distancing. In fact, learning languages has been associated with increases in white matter, and it strengthens connections within the brain. It helps maintain brain integrity with aging. People who are multilingual tend to have thicker cortices, they have greater cognitive reserve, and their hippocampus is denser, which is helpful, especially in aging when cognitive decline starts to come into play. So remember, keep physically active and mentally active during the break to keep yourself from getting cabin fever. Another thing you can do on the break is meditate, and we've talked about all the benefits of meditation in our previous video, but Jay Shetty is actually doing a daily meditations. He goes live on Facebook, so that could be something you join in on, or you can download the app Headspace, or again, you can YouTube meditation, guided meditation. It's just something to help keep you calm during this stressful time. As we finish up, I just want to say that there are lots of different suggested schedules that have come out online. There are COVID-19 developed schedules that people are making to help keep you productive and keep you from feeling cabin fever. But there was an interesting study that actually was released in which they compiled a whole bunch of other studies to figure out what the optimal schedule would be for psychological health. What these two scientists discovered was that we need to dedicate our time to things in this order. The most time should be spent on intimate relationships with other people, and then on socializing with other people. Again, the third top thing to spend time on is relaxing, then eating, praying, or meditating, or expressing gratitude, and exercising. These are all things that we've touched on today, and even though you are social distancing, you gotta make sure that you are interacting with other people for your own good and for their own good. So pick up the phone, make a phone call, call your family members, make sure everyone's doing okay, because we are a social species and we need to come together in this time. So with that being said, I hope you have some tips on how to deal with cabin fever while you're social distancing. There's a lot of interesting articles on all these aspects, which are listed down below in the description. I've also included some suggested schedules that people have posted in the description below. So hopefully now you can do your part in social distancing, but at the same time, make sure that you're staying mentally healthy and physically healthy during this time. I hope you all stay happy and healthy. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for how to fight cabin fever, leave them down below. We'd love to hear from you. And we hope to see you next time.